Today I want to talk about 4 axioms of existence that characterize contemporary critical thought. The entanglement of existence, the differential powers to effect this entanglement, the multiplicity of the event and the collapse of the event, and the provincialization and potential harm of Western ontologies and epistemologies that were brewed in the condition of colonialism and imperialism. But I'm not going to begin with those 4 axioms. I'm going to begin instead with a discussion of biopower as it relates to the concept of geontopower, so as to give the stakes of how we approach these 4 axioms of existence and the implication of these axioms for how we think politics and aesthetics. Since the 1970s, when Michel Foucault began to present his 3 famous lectures on biopolitics, beginning with Society Must Be Defended, and in some ways culminating with the birth of biopolitics. The West, and Western critical theory, has grown accustomed to thinking of politics as operating through life, and life as implicated in the governance of society. For Foucault, there were 3 great orders of governance that defined both the unfolding of a Western form of politics, but also characterized all politics to some degree. So again, we know and have known from the 1970s that for at least Foucault and his followers, sovereignty was defined by the right to take life or let live,
but under international
or
law,
to kill
the 3 die as spies.
or let live. Whereas disciplinary power was defined by the regularization of life, life organized and governed on the basis of getting the units to be uniform and substitutional. Over time, that disciplinary power came to be implicated or laminated into what Foucault began to think of as biopower, or a new way of thinking life and regulating society through that thought about life. That is, understanding that all life operated on a curve in which some thrived and some did not, and the role of governance was to increase the curve of life, of livability, of productivity. Once again, we see how capitalism and liberalism organize their powers through a particular concept of life that seeks to expand its powers, its ranges, and its productivity.
Oxygen. How they bond with each other.
Honeybees are important because they pollinate about 1/3 of the food you eat every day, and this relationship of honeybees and man has existed for centuries. Without honeybees moving that pollen, the foods that you and I enjoy don't exist anymore. A long time ago, honeybee colonies were huge, they were robust, they were populous, and now I don't see that anymore, and it's because they're being impacted negatively by lots of different pests, predators, and diseases. Honeybee health issues now are so complex. No one person, no one company, no one corporation.
We also know it wasn't long before critical theory outside of the West began to critique this Foucauldian history. One name in particular we associate with his critique is Achille Mbembe. And rightfully, we turn to his essay, Necropolitics. Read the history of the emergence of biopolitics, both its disciplinary form, that is the regularization of bodies, the ability for one unit to be substituted for another in the great military factory of Fordism. One could see disciplinary power and one could see biopower more robustly in the operations of the British and the Belgium and the French colonizations of Africa. But one could also see that at the heart of biopolitics was a sadistic necropolitics. But what of all the regions of existence that were maimed, destroyed, but neither killed nor murdered, on which both liberalism and capitalism depends? We certainly see the expansion of a politics of personhood around the world. In particular, the movement to bestow personhood, legal personhood, on rivers, on mountains, on Mother Nature herself. We know that these rights are already sunk in a history of a human that, as Sylvia Wynter put it, was the overdetermination of one kind of man, the kind of man who could treat others as nothing but labor extraction machines in the hot, sadistic plantations of the Caribbean. Geontopower is an organization of truth, of aesthetics, and of politics, organized around the drama of the division between life and non-life. Geontopower works through the division of existence into those things that are said to be life or said to be alive, and those things that are said to be non-life or to lack life in their very essence. in crucialist, I think you can see what I'm getting at here through the example of a fossil embedded in a rock, body slowly, carefully pulled out of the inert substances that have kept it dormant, but also available to our investigations. The importance of geontopower, that is, the governance of existence by the division of existence into that which can be born, reproduce, and faces death, and that which doesn't, but rather the way in which this division of existence is used to govern people in the long arm and the long history of colonialism and imperialism, and the way in which capitalism has used the same division to create the conditions of toxicity and climate change that are once again differentially affecting communities of color, the poor, indigenous, and subaltern people. In Western imperialism and colonialism, that refusal of a geontological imaginary is used as a justification for the colonization of people. Now, in the beginning, it could be brutal colonization. Say in Australia, the indigenous refusals to agree to this division of existence allowed colonizers to claim that they were living in the Stone Age. And here you just see the metaphoricity of geontopower spilling over. So here are these Stone Age people living in the Stone Age past, and colonialism was justified in large part by rectifying time, getting the right people in the right time. If they were Stone Age people, then their extermination was justified because they were in the wrong time. Later in multiculturalism and liberal recognition, cultural recognition, extermination, physical extermination, was no longer justified. But the treatment of indigenous analytics of existence that did not separate out rocks and rivers and winds and sands from fish and kangaroos and insects and humans were treated as these imaginary spaces that did not hold truth, but held difference. And in holding difference, but not truth, a hierarchy of Western epistemologies and ontologies were maintained. The West continued to argue that it held truth in its distinctions between the sciences of biology and the sciences of geology, the sciences of life and the evolution of complexity on the great chain of being. What's happening now is that this geontological division, things that have life, that can die, that have the drama of finitude, versus things we can treat any way we want because they don't have any life, they're just inert. So anything we do to them will give them value they did not have. And again, extractive mining is a classic case of this. Two things are happening. One, the division isn't working any longer in the West. It never was agreed to anywhere else, but in the West it's no longer working. And thus you see in Western sciences the emergence of geobiochemistry or biogeochemistry. You see the emergence of climate sciences, in which the attempt is to not divide existence into that which is life and that which isn't, but understand how all these systems are inside and outside of each other. How we breathe dust, and dust breathes us. But not only is this division not working anymore when it comes to climate change, when it comes to the pressing problems of extinction, of overheating, of toxic capitalism, but indeed the division is now revealed to be dangerous to the very spaces that used it to govern others. That is, it is revealed to be dangerous to the existence of the West itself, as the toxic tides that it once was able to contain in other spaces comes to seep and overflow back to its source. It's in the context of the collapse of geontopower, or at least its shaking, that 4 axioms of existence have emerged in critical theory. I'm hoping that you, when you hear what the axioms are, you say, yes, we know that. Because indeed, I'm saying that these are axiomatic now. That in at least some spaces of critical theory, critical aesthetic theory, critical political theory, ethics, and etc., these are now the 4 grounds on which we produce thought, art, affect, and politics. So the 4 axioms. The first one is that existence is entangled. The second is that depending on where you are, how you're formed in that entanglement, you have more or less power to affect not only your entanglement, its contours, qualities, powers, but the entanglement as a whole. Third, that the form of the event, and indeed the political event, but the intimate event, etc., but the political event, the form of the political event has multiplied and has collapsed. And fourth, that the epistemologies and ontologies that emerged out of the West in that long history of its own colonial formation, that is, it formed out of its colonial origins, are no longer sufficient, but they are dangerous. Let me say something about these 4 axioms, starting with the first one, the entanglement of existence. The argument is that there are not 2 objects that are then entangled, right? So you don't take this and that and tie them together. Rather, the argument is that what appear to be separate and independent existences are actual just dense regions of a entangled world. That is, it's not simply dialectic, it's materially constituted as such. We now don't think in terms of the big event, but rather we at least also think in terms of all the little small events that often populate the regions of the poor, the brown, the subaltern, the indigenous, in which life doesn't change in a moment, but is always slowly crumbling in the ongoing dispossession of global capital and settler colonialism, in which the event is something that perhaps one aspires to, but is always jumbled in the midst of simple things like you couldn't get your kid to school again. Or maybe you just can't find a place to cook your breakfast or take a morning shower.
Mom shower never been working.
They've been pulling that pipe wrong way. Savvy?
What about that stove when I cook on breakfast?
Now I'm not working, housing didn't come.
There's something funny here.
Someone making money here.
People living in overcrowded conditions.
10, 20 people living in the house.
Why does it happen? I mean, everyone wants to know the obvious.
People really don't give a crap. $30 billion and 500,000 people. There's a lot of fun and games going in there, and we need to sort that out, and we need to find out where the wastage of our funding is.
Forward to the bush, but where I'm gonna go. Forward to the bush, but where I'm gonna go.
Described community under the intervention. It's almost 8 years later and people here say overcrowding is still a real problem for them, along with basic maintenance.
There's something funny here.
People really don't give a crap.
There's someone making money here.
People really don't give a crap.
Forward to the bush, but where I'm gonna go.
Because someone's making money.
What?
Mommy!
Banking Royal Commission focusing on the exclusion and the exploitation of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people.
No one interferes, no one cares. There's someone making money here.
Mama, boogie shower work.
Everything blocked.
Because someone's making money here.
What?
There be physical mob, yeah. Toilet, shower, in block, yeah.
People really don't give a crap.
So when all them work.
No one interferes, no one cares. There's someone making money here.
No one fucking cares. No one fucking cares. Someone's making money here.
What?
Someone's making money here.
Forward to the bush, crush up lies. Leaving behind, leaving behind. Leaving behind the crushed up lies.
It's clear, there's something funny here. Someone's making money.
No one fucking cares. No one fucking cares.
Forward to the bush, crush up lies. Leaving behind, leaving
For decades, living conditions in many of the Northern Territory's small, remote Indigenous outstations have been third world.
Forward to the bush, but where I'm gonna go.
No jobs.
You map. Kana mother. Any power in my garden, I cook on breakfast and I go boogie.
No power, very polite. Bring that power cut.
Come on, I will walk up long way, you map.
I think no power with all day. I go forever, do that letter E map.
Jemrat na. I give up, Naimrat.
No one fucking cares.
I'm gonna stay land na. I'm not hungry one. Yeah, after I might be probably not go after.
Forward to the bush, but where I'm gonna go.
Where there's no jobs. People really don't give a crap.
No one interferes, no one cares. There's someone making money here.
Someone's making money here.
I think something funny here.
It's clear.
This house never been
No
built
one fucking cares. No one fucking
to stand up.
Someone making money here.
Forward to the bush, but where I'm gonna go. Back to him old style.
One of the things that I've been interested in thinking about these four axioms, is how it is we order them. That is, how we move from axiom 1 through 2 to 3 to 4. And why it may be, or whether we do, always seem to begin with axiom 1. That is, an axiom that seems to have an ontological claim, that seems to make an ontological claim. Existence is entangled. And then move to subsequent or consequential ontological claims. That is, because it's entangled and entangled in a certain way, therefore, depending on how and where you're entangled, you have different powers to affect your own entanglement, the qualities and characteristics that are afforded you there. And 3, that the form of the event multiplies and collapses, which leads to the provincialization of Western epistemologies and ontologies. But shouldn't it be the other way around? Or what are the implications? Or shouldn't it be the other way around? Or what might we gain by beginning with axiom 4 and moving backwards into a claim about existence? When we begin with axiom 4, we remember that the political content of all the other axioms flow not from the nature of existence or the nature of ontology, but rather from a history of the modes by which some have governed existence and claimed truth in their divisions of existence and legitimized the maiming, destruction, killing, and murder of forms of existence that didn't seek truth or knowledge, but sought profit and expansion at the expense of others, both of human others and of the more than human world.